and I'm going to run through this morning's UK GDP figure. So firstly, I'm just going to show you the 5 minute of this morning's release and just kind of run through how I executed it and what I was thinking beforehand, and then what I did over the figure. So at 9:30, we had the release of the figure, and kind of leading into it, we had this kind of this push up higher in the market and in the Bund here, and the kind of context of the move, it was quite a tricky move to kind of stay long and very churny. And then on the figure, which was a miss, we kind of had the blip up and kind of like the for me anyway, the kind of extent of the move kind of occurred all in one candle, and then we had this sort of deep pullback, which I mean on a 5 minute doesn't, was more kind of on this candle here, had this kind of deep wash back and then push higher, and it's quite a common sort of trade that we get on especially UK figures when the Bund lags the gilt over BOE, etc. And this is just kind of so when because the market kind of blipped off the page, for me it was a matter of kind of reevaluating and taking looking for another trade, as it kind of washed back and see if it gave you another chance. So let me just run you through sort of the things I was looking for after the figure. I'll play it at twice the speed just to start with. So yeah, for me, and then so obviously the figure has just been released. It was a small miss. It was 0.1 miss or 0.2 miss, and yeah. So obviously the markets, everything kind of blipped as so. We have cable on the right here, and then what I look at as well is like my gilt on the left. So then what you tend to find is kind of usually like a very deep kind of pulling of the bid pullback is like really nasty. Kind of price action initially, especially if you're trying to attack the break, and then when it kind of starts to settle down, you're trying to find a range of which someone starts to pick it up passively, right? So for me, I was kind of looking for a pullback at least to the starting price of this move. So again, on the 5 minute, the 64s is where the figure was released. So for me, like anything kind of pulling back to around 64s was a really prime place I wanted to kind of observe, and also whilst kind of watching my gilt as well and kind of how we were trading. So for me, it's just a matter of now trying to find an exhaustion in this move, and then seeing this type of churning price action kind of come in again, because it can go a lot further than you think before the kind of exhaustion steps in, and then there is, for me anyway, there's quite a high probability trade that when the Bund is lagging the gilt like this, it does kind of catch up. And the way it goes down, kind of like this offer over kind of price action, when the bids being pulled, nothing's really hitting the bid, per se. I mean, there are clips going through, but I mean, for me, it kind of feels like the rug's being pulled out from underneath the longs. So for me now, you're starting to see this kind of exhaustion price action for the first time. 7 lots down, taking 66s. Bear in mind, 64s was kind of the area that I was looking for. And then again, we saw a downtick into 65s, and then we kind of instantly saw a big clip into 66s. So for me, this was like this first area of trying to scale in, and just try and feel out my extremes really. Like I want to be able to keep, and for me, this is kind of a trade which you sort of scale in with. As like I said, this trade can go quite deep, and for me, I don't really want to see it too far below 64s, 63s back into this area of volume. So and as you can kind of see, like instantly the market starts to bid up again on the kind of similar type of price action which it went down on. So for me, it was just like trying to really find the true extreme, short-term extreme of this move, and kind of work my position accordingly, and not get too fixated on trying to lift prices, more just try and pick it up passively. Let the kind of range find itself, let the churn kind of show itself. As you see, you're kind of seeing this constant reload. And it's more for me, I'm looking at clips hitting the bid here. And again, you see kind of, and then when prices don't trade like that, so instantly, 400 up, reload, like nice churn. So for me, when this market does kind of pull out, I'll slow it down as well, just because it's playing twice speed. So when the market now does roll over, it does a little flush down here. I'm kind of thinking, right, well, in this area there is someone accumulating. And the clips that go through from here now, I think it squeezes down to around 63s. It all kind of ties into how I'm trying to manage my position. So again, that kind of down ticking here, 10 lots, 13 lots into 64s. And for me again, so you've had this really big churn between 69s, 63s, and again you kind of see the book being pulled in a sense. I mean, you're not really seeing prices trade. Notice the reload at 63s, 300 lots trade 63s. 60 and up into the 64s, which is kind of an area, 135 up. You start to see the offer being pulled slightly. And for me, the kind of reaction you want to see is like the reaction you saw on the way down. So this bid should kind of like, this offer should kind of evaporate sort of thing. This size should kind of evaporate, and we should start trading back up towards sort of 74s. Which is kind of what we do start to see. And the thing with this is, I mean, you can take on quite a lot of size here and then kind of scale out and, try and work a position in this kind of range. I mean, for me, you know, you're looking for a kind of retracement around 50% of the initial move, looking for that kind of reload, just feeling the extremes. For me, it's more about people hitting the bid kind of thing, and that constant just firm reload. Like again, you're seeing, because it feels uncomfortable having someone hit into you like that. But like this kind of what you want to see in terms of like as the gilt kind of starts to turn. It's kind of more people hitting into bids and then kind of squeezing higher, as opposed to someone really aggressively kind of lifting prices. It's more someone soaking up after a big kind of exhaustive move, deep retracement, and then you're looking for that kind of first reaction on the ladder. And finding the extreme. And I mean, you're kind of looking, for me, the target was to kind of retest back up towards the 74s, the high that we kind of broke through prior to the figure being released, on the figure. So for me, yeah, it was a matter of, I'm not really looking to try and buy in. Like I said, I'm not looking to lift prices as prices goes higher. I'm trying to kind of look to soak it up passively, scale in, scale out, kind of again, notice how the 67s continue to reload. For me, I mean, you could start probably paying down 64s, 63s here. I mean, you shouldn't be taking more than a couple ticks risk on most of your size, purely because, if it starts getting back through this opening price of the figure, I mean, this could squeeze a lot further before you do get, maybe a very small bounce. Not that it can't bounce, but it's just a matter of, it's all about timing and letting the bid kind of show you what it's made of, as opposed to what kind of the aggressive buyers are trying to do. Because in reality, there's nothing really lifting like huge size, and it's not like the pace of the auction isn't very quick, so you're not trying to look to kind of interact with kind of what's going on at market. You're kind of trying to interact with what's being picked up, what type of buyer is in the market. Kind of, is it someone who's actually really accumulating size, or is it kind of just in a flipping sort of range? And then this is what I like to see, is like I'm saying, that kind of absorption, kind of step higher, clipping into the bid, and it's kind of, I was talking about it a lot, the kind of just the ladder of the pivot points. So for me, as this price kind of steps higher and higher and higher, you kind of have a more conviction in trailing your stop, or like your scale out stop. So I may be getting out of a quarter here. If we start to chase 66s and so on and so forth, like I kind of want to see this passive buyer just stepping up at higher prices, and kind of manage it like that. But if I fast forward this just a tad, I mean, it does end up trading up to 74s, and it's just, as the gilt does start to push. I mean, the gilt makes a new high, Bund kind of lags and makes a sort of swing high, and that was just kind of, for me, that was the trade. I mean, unless you were long beforehand, I mean, it was very hard to kind of get a good price and not then be destroyed in that washback. So for me, it was just trying to kind of work the pullback, understand going into it that there's likely to be a deep retracement, and then once you do get the deep retracement, then kind of leaning on the pivots as they show them in the market, like, because there is very kind of subtle nuances as to looking to pick up passively on the pullback, and then kind of managing, as you can see I'm doing now, as we kind of push higher, and this is kind of the kind of reverse price action of what we saw as we pulled back, and that really kind of nasty deep retracement we're kind of getting now, reversing as we're kind of pushing back up towards that high. So that was kind of what I was looking at today as for my play. This morning was quite tricky on getting on the bid, so for me it was just a matter of reevaluating, understanding where, is there a valid trade here, and is the reaction, I mean, there is a valid trade, as this happens quite often, but is that kind of responsive buyer in the market who's showing you that there's clear risk reward parameters to kind of work around. But